Today I've got a supersized Beastbox review video for you, and for those of you who are subscribers, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, thanks for watching this video. So today we're going to be looking at the Beastbox Air Force set, and that's a 3-pack that came in this massive box, and I've got to say this is an unusually large retail package. At its full height, this thing is probably between 12 and 14 inches without measuring it. Just to give you an idea what this looks like size-wise, we're going to pan up here, and it just goes up and up and up. It is a huge box. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Beastboxes, this is a follow-up on a theme of what I like to call
Boxes with Jobs. Oh yeah.
And this particular theme is Air Force, of course. They're all flying animals. Now, there was another Boxes with Jobs set, and again, Boxes with Jobs, that's just what I call them, because what they are is they're repaints of existing molds that are decked out with some sort of occupation, you know. Could be something like a police officer, could be a rescue, fire and rescue or something like that. Kind of an emergency responder. I think so far I've identified about 6 different categories of Beastboxes that actually have a job, as you probably recognize with my intro to this video. And this, of course, is part of an Air Team, the Air Force set. Prior release was a couple of years ago. That was the Firefighter Heroes set, these guys right here. And we're going to talk about them in just a little bit. And I did actually do a video review for these guys a couple of years ago, and I'm going to link to that review in the description. But since we're here real quick, we'll do a point of comparison just as far as this package size, just how gigantic it is. It is, again, enormous. It's at least twice the size area-wise as the Firefighter Heroes set. Now that set, to be sure, this is how it came packaged, and I outlined this in that specific review. And the way they came packaged is the characters were all cubed up, and you had their box chargers in the bottom section here, and of course it came with a foam insert and a lot of the usual stuff that you get, character cards and catalogs, instructions, all that stuff. They opted to go big with this particular set. These guys are 100% set up for retail display. Now, I don't know how much physical retail 5.2 Toys actually does. I would guess and assume that they actually have a much larger online retail presence where they don't actually physically display things like this. So that was their choice to ship it in a box this size, and it is a beautiful packaging job. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. And just to kind of outline what we're going to be looking at in this video, I'm going to do an unboxing. I have not opened this box as of today. We're going to go over all the figure details, take a look at each one of these figures here, and we'll probably do a quick comparison to the Firefighter Heroes set to see how they kind of measure up. We're also going to do a transformation demo for all 3 of these figures, and I'm going to wrap this up with a box grade, again, for all 3 of these figures, plus their combined assets as an Air Force set, or
Boxes with Jobs,
as I like to call them. And then I'll wrap up this review with some final thoughts there, so we're going to jump right into it. All right, so let's talk about some package details, and I've got to back up here because this is just too much to take in. So yeah, first thing I want to say here is it has some beautiful techie styling, you know, with this kind of grid pattern in the background and these orange accent pieces kind of going all the way around. So one thing that is interesting, and you see this on some Beastbox packaging, this has just been my guess, my assumption, I don't know. I don't know if anybody out there knows for sure, but I've been kind of curious if they actually produce 2 versions of printed packages, one that's intended for an Asian market, where they do have Chinese Mandarin prominently displayed, and another one for American markets or Western markets where it's prominently going to be in English. I am curious about that. If anybody happens to know if 5.2 Toys does actually do that, I would love to know, so leave me a comment if you happen to know. One way or the other, for this particular packaging, there is a pretty strong mix between Mandarin and English, and just as far as the character glyphs between both languages, I think stylistically it looks really cool. Kind of gives me a little bit of a throwback to those old Japanese import toys from the 80s, specifically like Voltron, Robo-Gatai, and that kind of thing, where you saw something that was, at least to a Western audience, seemed a little bit more exotic and whatever, so do dig that kind of mix of languages for these guys. As far as the package, yes, it does come with a handle on top here because it's so big. I guess I wanted somebody to literally be able to carry it out of a retail location, and that makes sense. On the side here, you've got all the characters in here, so yeah, that's Thunder, Overlord, and Black Wind. Now on the back side, there again, we have all 3, and I do dig this styling here with the outline around the character overlaid on the text of the character name. Again, mix of Mandarin and English, very nice looking. And the infamous instruction, where there are no instructions on the back of the box here. Got some cool techie details. So looking at that more closely, you got data 01, you got data 02, and data 03. And we're showing these guys all in their cube mode here. Another interesting detail is the origin of these characters, who designed them. So these were designed by 2 separate teams. X2R, who handles a lot of Beastbox designs, that's 5.2 Toys' internal design team, did Black Wind, and they also did Overload. And that's another detail that I am looking at here that I just realized. So there is actually a typo in this package. package. So you have what is clearly spelled Overload on the side here. There again, that's Overlord. I thought that was wrong, so whoops. But we saw a similar typography mistake in the Firefighter Heroes set, so that's nothing new. If you want to see a little bit more about that, yeah, go back and check out that video review that I did of them about 2.5 years ago. There again, that's going to be linked to in the description. Not knocking them or anything, but mistakes happen, I guess. Back to business. So I'm going to say this character is supposed to be Overload, not Overlord. What I was saying before, yes, you got X2R, they did Black Wind, they did Overload, and you have the Thunderbird Workshop. Don't read Mandarin, but I happen to know that's the name of this team here. They did the Owl, which is a very highly regarded figure. You ask any Beastbox collector, that is immediately going to be at one of their top of the list to be like a must-have type figure. So yeah, more stuff about these figures. Got more details about each of these, and we'll get into a little bit more of that. They come with 3 custom box chargers, and of course we're back around to the front, so we're going to get back into business here. We just got a sticker tab on the front here, and of course I got my trusty Red Devil. And a massive molded plastic insert, and I'm going to have to maneuver around here. Inside the package, you're going to find all the instructions here. You got character cards and some catalogs and things. Also, this huge backer insert, which I think is pretty darn cool. I'm going to have that on display for the rest of this review. So we're going to take a look at all this stuff here in just a second. First, I got to get this out of the package here because I'm completely out of room. All right, each one of these comes with an identical box charger. Very nice style. I love this graphic on the front here. Not quite as interesting as the Firefighter Heroes box, or box charger rather. And we'll take a look at those in just a little bit. But of course, they open and close real nice. Have that frosted panel on the side. And this is the older style box charger without the knobs and stuff on it. And for the figures, you got Overload, you got Thunder, and you got Black Wind. Now, as far as these box chargers go, 1, 2, and 3. And in case you don't know, box chargers have knobs on the sides, and they have little feet imprints so you can stack them one on top of the other. So you can push them side by side here real easy, or you can stack them vertically, just like so. They're a very nice sturdy design. They hold together very well. And of course, like I said, the lids open and close very nicely. As far as what comes in the box, got older style character cards. These all have bios on the back, which is what I'm used to and what I kind of prefer with Beast boxes. So we're going to take a quick look at all these. Starting with Overload with the correct spelling on his name. So as is the tradition with Beast boxes, anytime there's a variant of an existing mold, they always tack on a code name or initials or something like that. In this case, that's BB-45OL. The original character is Stratosphere. On the back, you've got all the details about this particular figure. This is back in the day when 5.2 Toys took the time to write a story about their characters and give you a little bit of detail on their specs, how they hold up as little fighting robots and that kind of thing. Overload, high on courage, very fast, fairly smart, has average defense and average strength. This is an outstanding buddy of the Skyforce and also the best supporter high above all. Air superiority's scope of work includes ground survey, communication relay, and air patrol. So it's interesting that they have air superiority capitalized. I wonder if that was initially intended to be this character's name. I don't know. Then we have Black Wind, which is BB-38BW. And by the way, the artwork on these is beautiful. I love what they've done with all of these. So again, lightning fast, fairly smart, low defense, low strength, and average courage. The fast vibrating wings and lightweight alloy armor allow the bearer to traverse through the battlefield with great speed and carry out all kinds of tasks. No matter how hard the reconnaissance or assault mission may be, Black Wasp gets the job done. I am suspecting that they did indeed have different names for these characters when these character cards were written. So another little character incongruity with this set of
boxes with jobs.
Oh yeah. And now on to Thunder, who is, I'm just about certain, the leader of this group, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. Designated with BB-49TD. Yeah, so he's pretty smart, super fast, top courage, he's got average strength, and relatively average, kind of lowish defense. And of course, as the squadron leader of the Skyforce, Thunder is best known for its exceptional flying talent and excellent commanding skill. When the night comes, it is time for classified mission sortie from LRS to CAS. It is the one to count on. And LRS, that stands for Long Range Surveillance, CAS, Close Air Support. Yeah, very well thought out characters. I've always loved what 5.2 Toys has done with character lore, and I kind of wish they'd still do that. It's their priority, however they sell and put figures out on the market, I guess. So, all right, so let's talk about some figure details. So this is the Beastbox Air Force set. And that, of course, is Overload, Thunder, and Black Wind. And these are again taken from the original molds. That'd be Stratosphere, Nocturne, and Gunpowder. And in each one of these cases, this is only the second release of that existing mold. So we'll take a look at these one at a time here. Now, what I want to say in general for all of these figures is they do have a beautiful kind of a stealth or a special ops type color scheme with this sort of dark steel blue gray here. It's not quite black, but it is very dark. In the case of Black Wind here, you have transparent black wings. They're beautifully done. Not quite as pretty as Gunpowder's, but they're very nice. Got some nice looking markings on here all the way around. Kind of techie looking insignia, you know, we're part of some elite force, that kind of thing. Got a beautiful stinger, kind of a laser pistol in the fashion of a stinger, something like that, which can rotate. You got some nice orange accents on here. White highlights, I do dig that. You got white on the tips of the legs here, and white markings again around the sides. And I do dig this silver mandible. Gunpowder has transparent eyes, which I like a little bit nicer, but I do like this mandible. That looks pretty cool. Got some nice white markings on the sides here, all around, and of course, the Beastbox Air Force logo right here on its back. So beautiful styling all the way around. Getting into its insect character styling, this figure can pretty well strike all the correct poses that you would expect for a wasp or hornet type figure. So you can have its legs down like that. You know, they're very flexible. Got a lot of joints in each one of these legs here. They can turn back and forward, up and down, and get into any number of aggressive poses that you need it to. And of course, like I was alluding to before, you can have it in that sort of striking pose with the stinger pointed straight at the who is coming at. The wings also have some nice posability on them. They're both on ball joints here, so you can have them folded straight back, and you can bring them up and over like so you can get them in just about any aggressive pose or whatever characteristic pose you need to get this figure in. So Gunpowder is one of those figures that I was always impressed with. Fortunately, I never did do a full review of that particular figure, but that's one in my collection that I'm very happy to have. And I'm happy to have this guy in my collection too, because he looks so good in this steel blue sort of special ops color scheme here. Awesome looking figure. That is Black Wind. Onto the Stratosphere repaint. Overload. Interestingly enough, this is the second time that a variation of the pterodactyl mold has found its way into a Boxes with Jobs set. Again, this one was based on an existing mold called Stratosphere, which I believe I said I don't have. So I did a little research to find out what type of prehistoric animal this is, and it is sort of like a hybrid, kind of a half step between a dinosaur and an actual bird, and I forget what the term for that is, but the actual animal is called an Archaeopteryx. And essentially what that is it's a dinosaur turkey with a bony tail. So 52 Toys actually went out of the way to add some articulated feathers on it, which I think was a pretty cool touch here. And for the wings, they even added in some stylized VTOL fans, so I think that's pretty cool also. Honestly, I probably should have gotten Stratosphere, but I ended up getting this guy, and very glad I did. Oddly enough, with this particular set, so one thing they did that differentiated between this character Overload and Black Wind is they used different colors for accent colors, so that's a little bit of an unusual touch, but, you know, not complaining or anything. So you got a little more of a yellow-orange on here, and this one's kind of a gold yellow or something like that, although he does also have bright orange eyes. And with both, you do have some transparent panels here, beautiful translucent black feathers here, and of course white accents on it. And it does have some beautiful styling all the way around the figure for sure. And of course, you have the Beastbox Air Force logo right on its back here. This figure does have quite a bit of articulation on it. Quite a bit of articulation on the legs. You can get in all kinds of different positions here. On the wings, you've got definitely some flexibility, so you can have them kind of bent down. You can have them tucked in next to his arm. That's probably not quite right, the correct pose here, but you essentially you get the idea. But you could have these folded up on its sides. Pretty similar to the birds. Can't remember exactly the best way to pose that, but yeah, you could definitely get them on the sides for sure. A good bit of head and neck articulation here, interestingly. So the head can tilt up all the way up the neck here and down, so you get it up to about a 90-degree angle here. The beak can open, of course. Got that, and it can open pretty wide. And this prehistoric turkey bird does have another little gimmick here, little action mechanism, which is this piece on top here. So in this forward position, its wings are basically locked into position here, so they're not going to move around too much. But if you push it back, you unlock the switch, and then you have your flapping mechanism, so you can get those wings to go up and down, which is a pretty cool little trick. So overall, Overload is a very nicely built, articulated figure. It's just one of those figures that you can have a lot of fun with, so I really enjoy fiddling around with this one. I really just enjoy this figure. Very nicely stylized and whatever, and does have that fun little gimmick, so that's very cool. On to the Sky Leader, which is this guy Thunder, who is pretty distinctive amongst his comrades because he has this sort of kind of a royal navy blue color instead of that steel blue gray, and some very striking red accents on it. So unlike the other owls, he does not have clear eyes, which isn't a huge deal, but they look pretty cool. You have a nice red color accent on the crest here, some beautiful white markings and that kind of thing like the other figures. And of course, he's got his Beastbox Air Force crest right here on his chest. And it's just overall really nicely stylized. Actually, this isn't even pure white. It's a little bit of an off-white, almost like a very light gray. And that is one thing for sure about 5.2 Toys. They do not skimp on details. And to show you a little bit of a difference, his face is painted white, so there is just a little bit of a distinction between that, the light gray plastic there. So, and being one of the owls, he is super, super expressive. Wings can be folded up very easily, so you can have him in sort of a bird resting on a perch type pose. Very easy to do that. His head is very, very mobile, so you can have him looking straight up if you want, looking straight forward. You kind of tilt his head, give you that quizzical look. And one thing to note is these flared out feather pieces on the sides of his heads. Not 100% sure if that's identical to the one on Nocturne. It seems like that one's just a little bit different, but I could be wrong. He does, as far as I can tell, have an identical crest on his head. So this is a horned owl, and the horns are actually also expressive. That's part of the transformation, but also kind of a little gimmick there. And he has this crest on his head to give you a little more expressiveness. So you can have an observant bird.
A very angry bird.
Observant.
Very angry.
Quite a bit that you can do with this figure. And another point that's interesting here, these owls are super, super detailed, is the beak can even open and close. It has this tiny little beak, but you can actually open it. So, and that's just a small part of why people love this mold so much. So we'll get into their cube modes when I do a transformation. And I'll just say up front, what you'll notice here coming around the back, this is one of those beast boxes that people rave about because it forms a nearly perfect cube. But a little bit of that is sacrificed with the character design, which isn't a huge deal, but you definitely notice the back is really squared up here. They do offset that a little bit by having this little hump where the feathers are on the back and that kind of thing, which, by the way, has more nice red detail accents. So very nicely done here. Coming around to the bottom, yes, the legs are very, very articulated. So you got a little bend at the knee there, a little expressiveness in the thighs, and the toes can curl up to form a claw. And for whatever reason that I've never quite figured out, even the side toe is articulated. So you can really have them kind of coming at you in a really aggressive stance. So that's very nice. There again, just as a point of comparison, yeah, that's the difference in color scheme. So you got a little bit more of a Royal Navy, sort of a dark, I would say still kind of a stealthy looking color scheme. And then the steel gray, almost like a special ops type color scheme. So I have a lot of direct lighting in my review space here, but what I would say is for this particular color scheme here, it's one of those that's a little bit elusive, meaning that in different lighting, it can look quite a bit darker. If you're looking at it in normal indoor lighting, this will appear definitely more black though. So I'm of the opinion, or at least wondering, if 5.2 Toys is intentionally doing sort of like the leader of the group for these Boxes with Jobs 3-packs in a different color scheme just to offset them from the other two. And just to show you what I'm talking about, we're going to take another look at the Firefighter set that I reviewed 2 years ago. So yeah, just a quick throwback. This is the Firefighter Heroes set. Like I was saying before, the leader is decked out in a different color scheme. And in the case of Water Cannon here, it's actually an entirely different costume. He's the only one here that's actually decked out as a firefighter. The other two are in a very beautiful kind of crimson red, black and white color scheme. They look like emergency vehicles, like firefighter vehicles. And on theme, this was overall just a brilliant remix of some existing molds to make them kind of come together as a little team, little unit that actually does an emergency service or whatever. So these are definitely Boxes with Jobs. And what I will say about the Firefighter Heroes team is their box chargers, I think, are a little bit cooler looking in my opinion, or at least a little more thought out. I do love this transparent kind of a sky blue color, you know, with the crest prominently on display. But then with this set, you have a little more extra detail put in here on the inside of the lid, where you've got an emergency spotter, sort of an exit ramp or whatever you want to call that for each one of these. But with some nice graphic detailing on the outside too. Get this out of the way and get back into focus on our team here. Now we're going to move on to some transformation demos. We'll start with Black Wind here. So the first thing you're going to do is rotate these antennae down and around so it's on top of his head, about like so. Then we're going to take all of these legs on each side and rotate them so that they're down and inward. And what's going to end up happening is each leg is going to collapse in on itself on the outside. You'll see what I mean here in just a second. So we're going to rotate that around, middle one around, and that one. We'll get to that in a second here. And it might be easier to do the middle one first. Rotate that in like so. Then we're going to take these, we'll have them about straight like that for now. So what I'll say for these hind legs is both of them are on these sliders here. Now this figure did come with this leg pushed up in its actual beast mode. Typically I think you'd want to have that extended out. Just gives it a little bit more of an aggressive stance, but otherwise one way or the other you're just going to want to make sure it's pushed in. You have these notch connections and these tab connections. Essentially with it pushed in you'll have it lined up here so it'll fold right up into that tab there. So we'll go ahead and fold these up, get it lined up and push it into that notch there like so. Do that for the other ones. So you got about that going on here for now. Same on the opposite side. There again, that's how this figure came in the box. And this one's a little bit stiff, so you may not be able to push them all together at the same time. So you got them folded around and up like so. The head is going to rotate 180 degrees. Then you're going to rotate these wings 180 degrees towards the front of the body. So you've got about a kind of a dart shape going on here. I'm not going to push that together right now because I think there's some more steps I got to get through here. Then you're going to rotate these wings over and around like that, and that's what'll start to form one of the corners. So you're going to want to have the abdomen about straight up like that, and then from there, what you're going to do is you're going to pull apart this midsection here. So I'll come over and out about like that. There's this hinge right here that it'll rotate on, so you'll rotate that 180 degrees, and that'll give you room, if you can get your fingernail up in there, to flip this piece up and over. And you'll also take these pieces on the side here and flip them out sideways. Get my fingernail on there, about like that. So what you're going to wind up doing is having this piece pushed all the way back about like so. You're starting to get a corner here with these midsection abdomen pieces here. And with enough clearance, basically you're going to take these side pieces here and fold them down and in about like that. They're going to form connecting pieces here in just a little bit. Then from here, you have a rotating piece on the upper abdomen, I guess, and you're going to rotate that around 180 degrees, about like that. So from here, kind of hard to see at this angle. I don't know if I can quite show that off, but there's a notch on the back of Black Wind's neck here, and that's going to connect to this tab. And you may need to push it in to get it into position, but that's about what you're going for. So then what you're going to wind up doing is taking these legs and forming kind of a triangle shape. So basically, I think the easiest way to do this is to bring it down like so. And then you're going to want to fold on this hinge up and in, if I can get that correct here, about like that. So that's about the shape that you'll have going on here. About like that. And then they're going to meet in the middle basically. And of course you do have a tab and notch connection here, so that'll compact up. If anything kind of goes out of whack, you just want to make sure the legs and whatnot are squared up so that everything kind of compacts up nicely here. Then from this midsection, there's another joint here, and you're going to want to fold from that joint. You're just going to want to make sure that the head remains connected to this part of the abdomen here. So we'll just grab at that point and we'll fold it down and over, about like that, and it'll collapse into position about like so. And if you don't have it already, then we'll bring this piece down, the stinger, so that it's about straight with that piece, but there's another hinge right here. And you're going to fold that up and over, like so. And what's going to happen is it has some interlocking teeth that'll connect on both sides here. So you're just going to want to push that down and in so that it connects with those tabs here. Might take a little bit of work to get that lined up correctly, but you'll find the right angle, whatever, you'll feel it kind of lock into place or whatever. Now you're going to want to rotate the stinger down 180 degrees. And on this piece is also on a hinge. So you want to drop that and connect that peg into that post there. This is one of those beast boxes that does have a certain order that pieces need to be folded and formed in. So if you have something that pops out of place like I did here, you'll just want to make sure that you reconnect it so it's not like a loose or janky box mode or whatever. So at this point, you're going to want to take this hinge on this top joint and rotate it down and around so that it's essentially facing forward. So we're going to do about like that right here, about that configuration. Same on the opposite side. Get about that shape right there. So then from here, we're going to fold over and around, and what's going to wind up happening is there are some thick tabs and connection ports here on the interior, and we're just going to make sure we get everything lined up so it connects with all that stuff. So basically, that tab right here is going to connect to that big tab right there. So we're going to fold that over and around and get that lined up. And then, so basically this part of the wing is also going to line up with the tips of the legs here. And there again, there's the tab and groove connection. We're just going to line up with that. Get it connected in there. Same on the opposite side. Rotate it around. And you may need to do a little bit of budging just to get it lined up correctly, but you'll get it in there. And again, you got that big tab that's going to line up with that other tab here. So I'm just going to look at it from the bottom angle here just to make sure I get it lined up. It's going to push in like so. Then you have that tab right there. That's going to push in like so. Then you have these interlocking teeth on the front here. They're going to mesh together. Just going to push them in like that. And this lid will conveniently close on top to form the box mode. So again, this is one of those figures that has a lot of interesting geometry that has to happen to get this thing to fold up into a cube. So I think it's one in particular that does require a little extra scrunching and squooshing just to make sure you got a clean box mode. Last point here, I almost forgot to do this, is these pieces have to fold over and around, so you do have a peg and post connection here. So that's just going to fold over like so. About like that. You just want to make sure you line it up there. Same on the opposite side. Up and over. Scrunch it in. And there goes one box mode. Now we're going to move on to overload. So we're going to close the beak up, and if it's not already, you're just going to want to slide this flapping mechanism back and pop it up like that, and you'll pull up these nacelles here just about like that. Now that gives you access to this locking mechanism here, and you're going to pull that up, pop this piece open like so, and then we're going to pull this piece back like so, and then we're going to fold in these feather ornamental pieces. Those are going to fold up and over like so. And they're on a sliding mechanism, so you just want to make sure you slide them up so that they kind of line up a little closer with this back panel here. So you're going to slide that up and over like that. Then you got about that lined up like that. This whole piece is going to rotate around 180 degrees, and you'll have to pull it out. It's on a spring-loaded piece. You just got to pull it out and rotate it around like that. It'll come up like so. Now we're going to open this cavity here, and there's some locking tabs here that will pop open here. And this piece will come out, and we'll pull this down like so. That's where we're going to stuff his head. So this will turn all the way around 180 degrees, and then you'll fold it up inside that cavity like so, and then you're just going to put it back in place. So you're going to snap that back in, and these tabs will close back up like so. Now the chicken legs are going to fold up and in like so, kind of form an angle there. And so what's going to happen is you've got a peg and post connection here that's going to connect here and here. So you're basically just going to rotate this pole piece around, get it up and over, and that'll lock into place on the side of the body there. Same on the opposite side, we're just going to fold the feet up like that, rotate it up and over. Just want to make sure that nacelle's out of the way there, and that's going to collapse into position like so. So you want to get it about in that position. Now these nacelles are on sort of pivoting arms here, so you just want to rotate them up and over so that they're lined up with the top of this trigger here. Get them about in that position. I believe that's correct. Then from here, we're going to rotate these handlebar looking pieces so they're forward facing. So that's going to come up and over about like so. Now this piece here is going to rotate down and in, and it's going to connect essentially to the back of the trigger there. And these tail feather pieces are on pegs, or at least they have pegs and post connections, so they're going to connect right here. So it might take a little bit of fidgeting to get it lined up correctly here, but you'll eventually get it. We're starting to get a side of the cube here, so that's pretty nice looking. And for the next step, basically, we're going to be squaring up the wings with the front of the body here. What's going to happen is you've got this peg here, that's going to connect to that post. So we're going to rotate this up and over, get that lined up so it'll connect directly to that post. Same on the opposite side. We're going to have the wings up and around, so basically you've got about this shape going on here. We're more or less entering the end game here. This part is relatively simple. Basically, you're just going to fold up the feather pieces here. These pieces are going to collapse inward, about like that. Then you're going to take the wings and fold them down and in, and you do have some tab and notch connections that are going to line up nicely here, so we'll just connect that there, that piece there. Then for the final step, you're going to want to push in these front claws just so it looks like he's kind of like hugging himself or whatever. And scrunch up as needed. I will say this much, this particular version of the pterodactyl mold doesn't really compact up as well as the pterodactyl. Well, it does, but the final step there I had a little trouble with because I'm not getting the tabs quite to line up on the side, and they're relatively small. They don't really dig into the notch very well because they're small tabs and small notches, but overall it does work as a cube. It's just not quite as good as the pterodactyl, at least from what I'm seeing here. And that's box number 2. Now we're going to move on to Thunder. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring his wings out like so, pop them out of the sides just like that, and we're going to fold these up so they'll fit inside the groove there on that wing, compact in like that, and they've got some nice tabs. They'll just snap right into it like that. And on the back side, I already had these folded up, but basically you've got a peg and post connection here. The interior of that port will connect to that. That'll line up just like so. Same on the opposite side. I've already got it connected there. You got about that. Now we're going to bring this entire back assembly up and back about like that. Rotate the head straight up, and those ear tufts will fold back and over, contouring around the top of the head there. Now we'll take this crest piece, rotate that up, bring it up to the top of the head there, then rotate that entire piece 180 degrees. Then we're going to flip this back piece up and over. Then we're going to take this back panel here, we're going to rotate that 180 degrees. We can bring these pieces in like so, bring that up and over, and in the peg and post connection here, it's going to connect from here to this piece. So we'll just set that up like that. Then we're going to kick the legs up to get them kind of up and out of the way. And you're going to want to rotate at the hip here, essentially like that. And what that'll do is that'll give you access to rotate this whole piece down. So you'll basically have this tail piece flush up against with this white piece here, about in that position. Now we're going to rotate this entire piece around 180 degrees. That's going to cover the top of the head like so. And then the wings are going to come around and over. So you got a peg and post connection here. So we're just going to flip them around like that. Cover up the side just like that. We're going to push in this piece, push the tail feathers down, and again, peg and post connection. That'll cover that part. And then you're basically just putting in the feet in place. We're going to rotate those forward, rotate them in. And there is a tab connection here that'll connect to the feet here. So we'll just push that in like that. Rotate it up, rotate it in, connect it in, and there's box mode number 3. Again, this is why people love this particular owl mold so much, because it does compact into a very nice looking kind of a uniform cube. It does have some little hollow bits here and there, some waffling and that kind of thing, but it's really not that bad at all. And all of the sides are flat. There's no other Beastbox that compacts up this nicely. In fact, if you wanted to take a look at the rating that I did for 2 of the other owls, White Noise and Nocturne, I gave those 2 one of the highest ratings I have for any Beastbox. Definitely worth a look. I'm going to link to that one in the description. Overall, pretty nice looking cubes. Don't have any major complaints. I would say the weakest of these is certainly going to be Overload here, just because at the tail end here, the wings and feathers don't connect to the sides of the body as well as I think they should. I mean, it definitely forms an okay cube, but you got a little bit of play on that, so that's not going to affect its box mode there. Speaking of which, we're going to go ahead and open these suckers up. So you got Black Wind, Overload, put them in like that, and you have Thunder. Guess it doesn't matter which way I put them in, just like so. Beautiful. Now it's time to give this Flying Ace Brigade a box grade. This is my rating system of 6 categories of 5 points each for a total score of up to 30 points. I'm rating each of these figures individually, and as a team, they'll get a combined average. All 3 of these figures are very nicely sculpted. They have great color schemes and are on point as a Special Ops Air Force team. 5 points across the board. The Air Force team overall has great playability and carry over characteristics of each animal design very well. What they do lose out on in my mind is they're all aerial creatures, which just about requires you to display them in a flying pose. They don't come with a single stand, let alone a simple perch for the owl, which seems especially short-sighted considering the current retail price, let alone that the massive package would have easily had room for extras. 4, 4, and 4 out of 5. Transformation for all of these is not difficult and pretty fun to do. Between the 3, I'd say Black Wind is slightly more difficult than the others. Overload doesn't come together quite as well as the others with a little bit of flex in its cube mode. 5, 4, and 3 points. All 3 figures have everything you need for their individual animal forms, with Thunder being a slight standout over the other 2. 5, 4, and 4 out of 5. The Air Force figures are nicely built with sturdy plastic and joints, but what I will say is, compared to their predecessors, they're slightly lesser versions of the originals. So if money and figure availability were not a factor and you only cared about the individual molds rather than having this particular deco, Nocturne, Gunpowder, and Stratosphere are the superior releases in my opinion. 4, 4, and 4 out of 5. The Air Force team is a fun set. I really dig their stealthy special ops styling. Individually, they're all really good character designs with cool gimmicks and fun to fill around with and put on display. The one thing that really detracts from that is considering how much this set costs. Again, no display stand? Seriously? I mean, if 52 Toys puts out a repaint on theme of an Air Force, I think they really should have leaned into that. 4 points across the board. And that brings the box grade total for all 3 of these guys to 27, 25, and 24 points respectively, which brings the Air Force team average total to 25.3 out of 30. On theme is boxes with jobs. I've always felt like figures with a little something extra beyond a regular release always elevates the character, so I'm awarding an extra fun factor point, bringing the total to 26.3 out of 30. So there's an in-depth look at the 52 Toys Beastbox Air Force set. I bought this over 1.5 years ago, so I've been long overdue to get them out of the box and get a review done. And I'm glad I finally did. I do hope 52 Toys does more boxes with job sets because I get a kick out of these. It's a great way to repurpose an existing mold, and in the case of the Firefighter Heroes and Air Force, it really did plus up those figures. Do you own either of these team sets or have any prior releases with job decos? What team would you like to see 5-2 Toys take on next? Let me know with a comment. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch this review. Leave me a like if you enjoyed it and share this if you know someone who's interested in transforming robot figure sets. Thanks, I'll catch you in the next one.